afternoon for today's webinar on establishing a baseline for becoming a green community. So hopefully this will be very helpful to any of you out there that are considering our fall designation round. This will be, the deadline for that will be in October of 2015. We're going to be hearing from Seth Pickering, who's the Southeast Regional Coordinator, and Amy Pawelka, who's our Municipal Energy Efficiency Coordinator. Before we get to the meat of the issue, we have a few housekeeping items that we'll run through here. So for those that don't know, but probably those folks who are on today do know that energy matters of all kinds are handled by the Green Communities Division, not just the Designation Grant Program. I'm not going to run through everything that we have offering, that we're offering to cities and towns today, but I did want to point out that the regional coordinators are available to help you with all of those items. You see all their names and contact information here. If you don't know who they are, please make sure that you take down their information. Also, you can take a screenshot of this slide or any of the slides today by just clicking on the little camera in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, which might be handy for capturing any of the information that you'd like to capture today.
Sorry, it doesn't show up here.
So as I mentioned, we do offer a lot of different services and activities for cities and towns across the state, whether you're designated as a green community or not. The website that is listed at the bottom is very helpful to keep an eye on to see what's coming up next, and especially make sure, if you don't already, make sure that you sign up for our e-blast by clicking that link, which you can get on our website, so that you're kept abreast of what's going on. We put out an e-blast approximately every couple of weeks on new activities. A couple of things that I know we have coming up that you might want to just jot down is that next week on April 15th, we have a webinar on solar canopies that will be offered on, I think it's Wednesday the 15th from 12 to 1. That will be on our webinar page, which is on the Green Communities page, if you want to just double check that and register for that. And also keep an eye on our website and our e-blast for another round of Owner's Agent Technical Assistance Grants, which we expect to have available for a rolling application round starting probably in July. With that, I just want to point out that we are recording, as we always do, and we will have the slides and the recorded audio on our website in about 48 hours. We're also going to take questions, as many as we can, at the end of this presentation. We have sort of a lot of information packed in here today, so for whatever we can't answer today, we're going to be posting a written Q&A on our website within the next couple of weeks. And I think that's basically it. I already mentioned about being able to get the screenshot if you'd like. You can ask questions during the webinar with the Q&A icon, which is also up in that right-hand corner of your screen. So I'm going to turn it over then to Seth, who is going to start out our presentation, and then he'll turn it over to Amy later on.
Thanks, Lisa. So this graphic here shows you that we're up to 136 green communities here in the Commonwealth. And as of December 3rd of 2014, you can see the 13 new, most recent designated towns. We go to the next slide. So once you're designated as a green community, you're eligible for grants. That's a $125,000 base, plus additional monies based on population and per capita income formula. The maximum grant is $1 million. We've had a range of grants from $130,000 approximately in Hatfield to $1 million for Boston, and we've granted approximately $40 million in total to implement energy efficiency and renewable technologies. The projects that the grants help to pay for, you can see down at the bottom, there are 137 grants that we've completed to date, 84 as part of the designation process, and 53 more as competitive grants for existing green communities, which have totaled a little over $25 million. Total project costs of those 137 grant projects has been a little over $41 million when you include the utility incentives and contributions from the towns and cities that have been involved. The annual savings is almost $7 million, and in energy savings is equivalent to a little over 1,500 Massachusetts homes, and greenhouse gas reductions of a little over 3,000 cars being taken off the road. So if you're thinking about becoming a green community, these are the steps that we recommend that you take as a municipality. Try to organize an energy committee. Please contact the regional coordinator. You don't need to do these in that order. We do recommend that you use the regional coordinators as a resource. We are available, and we are happy to answer any questions you might have when it comes to taking the steps to become designated or to receive any of the resources that are available through the division. We do recommend that you look into getting trained and get access to be trained on Mass Energy Insight. Amy's going to talk about what that is in detail later. Also, either through your regional coordinator or directly, please contact the utilities and find out what type of audit services are available from them at no cost to your municipality. And then we also recommend that you talk to other cities and towns in your area that have participated in the program to get feedback from them. So there are 5 different criteria that are required for a city or town to be designated. You have got to put all of these 5 criteria in place before you actually apply. And then, as Lisa indicated, the application deadline will be later in the fall, usually towards the end of October. We're going to concentrate on criteria 3 today, which is the creation of an energy reduction plan. And to do that, you've got to establish a baseline by which you would have to reduce your energy usage in a plan by 20% over a 5-year period. So we're going to concentrate on that, and we're going to talk about some of the things that the grant funding can be used for, which are mostly energy efficiency and conservation measures and some renewables.
Okay, at this point we're going to ask a poll question of you. We're going to launch the poll question, and basically, is your community considering applying to become a designated green community this fall? So we're launching that now, so check your screens and respond as appropriate. Okay, with pretty much all the voting in, we've got 70% said yes, and 30% said it's not applicable, so everybody else is not there.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go briefly through the basic questions about an energy baseline in a potential green community. So who's included in your municipal structure? It includes all divisions and departments. Okay, so there's a real communication component to this. You need to reach out and make contact with the people that basically run municipal buildings, your school department, municipal and school vehicles, street and traffic lights, your water and wastewater treatment plants, which can be a big consumer of electricity, pumping stations, which go hand in glove with that infrastructure. And also things like open space can consume a little more electricity than you might think when it comes to things like lighting at cemeteries, parking lots, athletic fields, things of that nature. Okay, enterprise funds. We do know that some cities and towns have services such as water and sewer on enterprise funds, but they may be included in the baseline energy reduction plan, even if they have a separate governing body or are third-party operated. We at DOER Green Communities strongly encourage that these operations be included in the baseline energy reduction plan so that they can be eligible for grant funding. We have found that in a number of cases, the grant funding has been very helpful to these types of operations. Regional school districts. Okay, so this usually pertains only to towns because they're the ones that usually are parts of regional school districts. Elementary schools are usually included in the Green Community Baseline and the reduction plan. For regional, middle, and high schools where students are attending from multiple towns, they too can be included in designated applications and become eligible for grant funding. For those regional schools that have students from multiple towns to be included, the school must establish the individual school's energy baseline. So you'll have to work with your regional school district and have the school establish their own baseline. And then using the municipality's funding assessment percentage, that determines the portion that will become part of the green community application, city or town, their energy baseline. So it's a percentage of the energy baseline. It does not have anything to do with the funding. The funding assessment percentage does not affect the amount of grant funding that's available to a regional school or a regional school district. It's up to the town to decide once they get the reward how much they may or may not choose to share with the RSD. And just a side note, the regional school district must also adopt the energy reduction plan as it's submitted, and they must also adopt a fuel-efficient vehicle policy that meets the DOER Criterion 4 requirements. So you get some homework to do, you know, inside town government. Again, it's a communication thing. You need to contact all the departments. You need to do outreach and share information with all departments to gather energy use information, talk to people about vehicle usage, identify energy efficiency opportunities that may be available in buildings and operations, and also let people know that there's a potential for grant funding available to help reduce costs, reduce the amount of energy that's being used. Another good place to start is to find out where the accounting, the cost centers are in the different parts of the local government, because they usually pay the bills. They usually know how much energy is being used and how much it costs. So again, this is just a graphic. So what energy usage is included in the baseline? Again, it's all energy usage by the municipality, buildings, vehicles, street lights, and wastewater water treatment plant type of operations. And again, so all your buildings, electricity and fossil fuel, vehicles, you want to split up your gasoline and your diesel fuel usage, street lights, traffic lights, and open space. Again, those are usually electricity accounts from your utility, and then water treatment plants and municipal services, electricity and fossil fuel use. Again, the fossil fuel can be natural gas, it could be fuel oil, or propane.
Okay, at this time we'd like to throw out a flash quiz poll question here. What is the energy unit used in Green Community's energy baseline? kWh, MMBTU, both of the above, or joules? Okay, with 80% of those voting, we have MMBTUs comes in first with 60%, and 40% think both of the above.
So the answer is kind of a little bit of a trick question. We do end up using both when you're creating your energy baseline. We take the kWh and the millions of BTU from fuels, and then we actually convert the kWh to millions of BTU. So the baseline is measured in MMBTU, which stands for a million British thermal units, and a BTU is a measure of the energy content of something that's fuel or electricity. It is the amount of heat that's required to increase the temperature of 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit. And millions of BTU is a common unit of measure applicable to all energy types. So how is the baseline measured and calculated? The energy use baseline inventory must be provided in millions of BTU, as we've just said. You can use the following tools. You can use our Mass Energy Insight, Portfolio Manager, School Dude, or another tool that might be used by the municipality that DOER reviews and deems acceptable. Some towns have their own Excel spreadsheets that suffice. We do recommend that you learn and use Mass Energy Insight whether you're going to do a green communities designation application or not, but definitely in the event that you're going to apply for designation, we feel that MEI is the best way to go. So now Amy's going to talk about what MEI is right after this poll question.
So we're turning it back over. The other voice you're hearing is Charlie Tuttle, who's our technical expert today, another member of the Green Communities Division.
Okay, so here we go. Is your municipality currently using MEI? Okay, with 70% of the votes in, we've got the 75% are saying yes and 25% don't know. So we've got some work to do here.
All right, so it sounds like most people are at least somewhat familiar with Mass Energy Insight, which is kind of exciting to myself at least. Hopefully it means you'll be able to gain some knowledge through the next couple slides. So what we're going to do is walk you through what Mass Energy Insight is and what it can do for you and what you have to do for it to make it useful to you. So it's a web-based tool for municipal energy data management, analysis, and reporting. Screenshots here you can see are the login screen and the screen you see after you log in. I would say that Mass Energy Insight is in widespread use across the state. So we have, as you can see in green there, a lot of municipalities using it, as well as a few regional school districts and a number of regional and water or wastewater districts. So if you're using Mass Energy Insight, I'm just going to give you an example of what the end result would be. One of the reports that many municipalities find useful. This is the baseline dashboard report. On the upper left bar graph, that's a bar graph of your total energy use for your community for 3 different fiscal years. Here we see FY 09, 10, and 11. And so that rolls up all your usage from your entire town into those 3 bars so you can track usage over time. On the right, the bar graph shows usage by department. So you can see at one glance the energy usage of the Public Works Department or the School Department or the Water Department for those same 3 fiscal years. And then below you see in the tables, you can see the same information just in numerical form, in a table format here for departments. And on this side, the same information is broken down slightly differently by facility categories, so those buildings, open spaces, street lights, vehicles, and water and sewer that we were talking about previously. Okay, so to get to this point, what I'm going to do is walk you through how to set up your account to make your data flow into this report in the optimal way. One thing that we can say that makes Mass Energy Insight very useful to people is that once you have identified your electric and natural gas accounts that are served by investor-owned utilities and some municipal light plants, that information is loaded into Mass Energy Insight without any extra work on your part. So you need to identify the account number, but after that it becomes much easier. And I wanted to assure you of that before we take a look at the process, just because the process is rather detailed. And assure you that once you've worked through this, the setup is most of your work. After that, it becomes much easier to use as a tool. So as I mentioned, what you want to start with, and as Seth mentioned, is identifying your account numbers. And those would be for your electric, in particular, your electric and natural gas accounts. And then you want to collect the energy usage for other fuels, diesel, gasoline, propane, heating oil. You're going to want to become MEI authorized, and we're going to walk through each of these steps in a little more detail. We provide training in the form of videos as well as support through the regional coordinators. Then you're going to do what we call setting up a tree structure of your facilities and departments if you so choose. You're going to take those accounts you've identified and assign them to your facilities so that the information in Mass Energy Insight reflects what the energy is actually being used for. It's being used for a school, it's being used for your town hall, etc. You're going to assign categories and subcategories to those facilities. Again, so the data becomes meaningful. Then you're going to load that actual usage you've collected for the fuels shown, and then you're going to ensure that those electric and gas accounts that you have identified actually have had usage loaded by the utility. So let's walk through these steps. First step, become authorized for Mass Energy Insight. Mass Energy Insight is a secure database, which means that you need to, each individual using the system has to be authorized by the public official, the chief elected or appointed official, on letterhead. And what you should do is reach out to your regional coordinator to get an example, so you make sure to get the signature on the right piece of documentation. The next step is to go and do a little training. So once you're logged into Mass Energy Insight, you can go to up here to support. If you click on that support link, you'll see this screen where you can see a number of items that can help you learn more about Mass Energy Insight or answer your questions. In particular, the glossary is good for finding out different categories and subcategories. The videos is this other screen that's shown here, and those are very useful for learning how to use Mass Energy Insight. They walk you through step by step how to do different tasks. And if you notice, each of those videos is less than 5 minutes long. So you want to start with the Organize Your Energy Data video shown here. And then as you have questions, maybe you have a question simply on how to change the name of your tree item, and you can see you can figure that out in less than 2 minutes, and then immediately put it to work. All right, so when you go, and after you know a little bit about Mass Energy Insight, then you go to set it up. And what you should do is take a step back for a minute and think about what you want to get out of this information, at least at this point in time. Do you want to report to each of your department heads? So I do know Mass Energy Insight users who will print out a monthly Mass Energy Insight report for each of their departments and bring it to their meeting of department heads so that they can continue the conversation around energy. Or are you thinking more to only report this, use the information to create your green communities baseline and track your progress and report to DOER, or both? So after you've figured that out, that will help you determine how to best spend your time in setting up Mass Energy Insight. One point I'm going to emphasize repeatedly is that all your accounts need to be assigned to a category in MEI. All your accounts need to be assigned. So let's talk about what that means. Here's an example of the organization tree, what we call the tree in Mass Energy Insight. You can see for this hypothetical town of Ames, 2 different facilities, an elementary school, several facilities, an elementary school and then multiple fire stations. So this town actually chose to set up things in 2 different fashions. They've established a fire department under which all the fire stations appear. So this department can take a look at all their facilities at once. In contrast, the elementary school is simply a facility under the town. There's no department level reporting there, which will give you different capabilities when you go to look at the report. Both ways are valid. The other thing I would point out here is that all of the accounts are assigned under a facility, here and here. In contrast, this setup contains information that's not useful. So the reason that I say that is because you have an account here that's assigned under the fire department. So we don't know, we may know the fire department pays the bills, but we don't know what that energy usage is being used for. Which fire station does it actually serve? Similarly, this account is simply assigned to the entire town. So we really don't know what this usage is being used for. So that's when I talk about all your accounts should be assigned under a facility. Like you can see here, an account under a facility. So just to give you an idea of what happens if you misassign an account, how does it look, how does it not provide information to you in Mass Energy Insight reports? And information that is less than ideally useful shows up as no. So you can see here in the department, your results by department, this town chose not to assign any department. So this table is basically irrelevant to them. You can see that some of their facilities do not have categories. so they're showing up as null here rather than saying that usage is being used for a building or water and sewer. And the other way it could be considered as null is, like we showed in the previous slide, if an account is sitting under a department or the entire town rather than under a facility. So I mentioned briefly that something could be considered null if there's no category defined. Let me show you what I mean by that. So this is, if you click on any of the facilities in that tree, this is the screen you'll see, you can enter a lot of different pieces of information about your facility. Some of them are useful, and there's just a couple that are really important, that are really required. I'll start with the ones that are really the most critical, which are your category and subcategory, and if it's a school type. So what these allow you to do is basically categorize your energy use for each facility. If you name something ambiguously, like street lighting building, is that really a building or is it street light? Someone looking at that information wouldn't know. If you assign it a category, then you should be able to gain more of an understanding of that. So the categories and subcategories both help organize your data as well as enable you to compare yourself to other peer buildings. We have reports that allow you to compare your town hall to all other town halls in Mass Energy Insight, but it can only do that if it knows your facility is a town hall. So if you really want to enable the full power of Mass Energy Insight, these categories and subcategories are really critical. If you need help with the subcategory options, the glossary is your best source for that. A couple notes on a couple other items. I just highlighted this exclude from baseline field as well. You should not have to touch this at all in most cases, but once in a while a town will have a facility that's kind of an oddball. So, for example, I know of towns that have a rental property. They may rent out to a community group. And although they want to track the energy use of that facility, assuming they pay the bill, so maybe they can charge back to that facility, that should not be included in their baseline unless you choose to do so, because they don't have control over it. So there's that option available. I would not use it unless you consult with your regional coordinator first. The other fields that are really useful are square footage for your building, because then you can look at your energy use for any particular facility, which is something that someone else helping you do an energy assessment is looking at. And then I want to point out one other thing, which is called interventions. And this is where you can mark the date and a title for any clean energy upgrades you might have done. A lighting project in January of 2014, solar PV went on the roof. And you look at a specific building, the facility that is assigned to, and in some of the reports you can see that intervention and hopefully see the change in your energy usage. Okay, so to help you through this maze of different options, we have a report called the Setup Completeness Dashboard, and it gives you an overview basically of your information. And then if you're just getting started, it'll have a list of accounts that need to be assigned to a facility. It has a list of categories that should be assigned and a list of subcategories that should be assigned. These three are the most critical. Square footage, like I mentioned, is very useful, but you can always come back and do that if you don't have time to do everything the first time. Yeah, you don't need it for your baseline. And then school type helps you compare, again, to your peers. Okay, so let's assume you have set up your tree, everything's going smoothly, and now you're thinking about, well, what energy data do I have in there? As I mentioned before, for electric and natural gas accounts, you only need to assign your account number, identify the account number, and assign it to the appropriate facility. The usage will be loaded for you. The utilities provide that information to DOER, who then has its consultant load the information into Mass Energy Insight. You don't see that process. The usage you do need to load are for those delivered fuels, oil, propane, gasoline, and diesel. So you need to identify that usage and load it up. There's two ways you can do that. You can type it into the proper fields in Mass Energy Insight are loaded by a spreadsheet. And I would say the best ways to get help with this would be to watch the video. Again, there's a training video, and or to talk with your regional coordinator. One additional note I have is that if you are using Mass Energy Insight to track your costs and you have a competitive supplier, this is something you need to think a little bit about. If you receive one bill from your electric utility that includes both their distribution charges as well as the supply charges, your cost information in Mass Energy Insight should be correct. If, however, you receive two separate bills, one from your electric distribution utility and one from your competitive supplier, your cost information will not be accurate, and you need to load competitive supply cost data. So again, that would be through typing the information in or loading a spreadsheet. Accurate cost information is very helpful, but it's not required to be included to establish your baseline or to report as a green community. Okay, now you've identified all your data, you've assigned your electric and gas accounts, you want to make sure you haven't missed anything and that you really are getting usage loaded into those accounts you identified served by the electric and gas distribution company. So you can go to this report, which is called Data Loaded Overview, and take a quick look at all your usage information. You can see for each facility the fuel and the account number, and then if the information, if any information has been loaded, it shows up as green. So this is a really quick way to identify big pieces of missing data. For example, oh, we forgot to load the oil use for this facility. There's a more detailed look at this data if you want to look at the actual numbers in those, in the report just next to it called Data Loaded Detail. Okay, so this has been, it is a significant investment to get all this information together, but this will really enable you for success in the future. You're going to be able to have in one place an easy place to go to and pull out your successes. You can show the impact of a lighting project or a big boiler replacement when the next year you see a reduction in your energy bills. So it's nice to have that kind of graphic and be able to look at the information. You can build communication using these graphs around energy use and budget. Like I said, it's communicating to your different departments, it's communicating with your public or your stakeholders. We've seen towns produce reports for their community members on their progress monitoring energy and including Mass Energy Insight reports. You can look at the big picture. You can monitor your overall energy use and costs. You can also use this to help identify inefficient facilities. So when you sit down and try to work with an energy assessor, for example, you have an idea of where to start from. You have the idea that, yes, this is my least efficient building, even if it might be the newest building. Sometimes that does happen. You can compare your facilities to your peers' facilities. As I mentioned, you can compare your town halls or your elementary schools. If you see someone that looks like they're doing a great job, maybe you can reach out to them and find out what, I know towns are always looking to share successes with one another, and regional coordinators are definitely good at helping facilitate that, as well as our online community forum of Mass Municipal Energy Group. And finally, you can use Mass Energy Insight to report to DOER. If you become a designated green community, you can use Mass Energy Insight for your annual reporting for your energy use piece. Only there are other pieces for your annual reporting, but for that piece at least, you just make sure your data is up to date and fill out one very quick table, and your reporting on your energy use is done. That's a big advantage compared to some of the other tools that you might think about using. Okay, take a breath. So the final question, I think we've covered most of the questions, but let's talk about when. What year should be your baseline year? If you're applying this fall, the options that you have available are shown. There's fiscal year 13 through fiscal year 2015. You can choose fiscal year or calendar year. The reason we allow you to go back in time is to claim credit for any efficiency upgrades you might have performed in one of the subsequent years. So let's talk about why you might choose to use one of these years versus another through some examples. So which year should you choose? That depends on how much, one of the central questions is how much time you'd like to pursue the 20% reduction using a grant fund. So for an FY13 baseline, your energy reduction plan time frame is FY14 through FY18. If you're designated this fall, that means FY14 is already gone, FY15 is already gone. You have 16, 17, and 18 left, 3 years left. If you use an FY14 baseline, your 5-year time frame is FY15 through 19. You gain an extra year to use that grant funding. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is what prior energy efficiency projects have been completed and the amount of reductions from those projects. For example, if you really haven't completed many or any energy efficiency upgrades, presumably you would like more time to accomplish your goal of 20% energy reduction. So a later baseline year would be a better choice. If you completed some significant efficiency projects in a preceding year, you might wish to take one of the FY13 or FY14 baseline years so that you can see those reductions during your 5-year time frame. What I would say is this gets a little tricky, and it definitely gets into the specific circumstances of your community. So do reach out again to your regional coordinator to make sure the logic for your baseline is sound. And I'm going to walk you through one example just to give you an example of what to think about. So in this example, this town used 28,000 MMBTU in FY13, but their energy use went up in FY14 to 32,000 MMBTU. Let's assume this town completed some energy efficiency projects in the spring of 2013, which is during the FY13 fiscal year. So they completed a lighting upgrade in the school, in all their schools, and they have had a projected energy savings of 150,000 kilowatt hours. And if you convert that to MMBTUs and compare it to the FY13 baseline, you could see that could have a 1.8%. That would be a savings of about 1.8% of FY13 energy use if the savings are realized. They also may have completed a boiler replacement. Usually boilers save more money, more energy than a lighting project. So this project may have saved 2,000 MMBTU, which is 20,000 therms is 2,000 MMBTU. That's 7.1%. So let's look at some different circumstances. If it was only lighting, the town might wish to use the FY14 because if they only had a 1.8% reduction, that's a great start, but is it really worth losing an entire year? That's the question. If they've only done the boiler, or both the boiler and the lighting, the town might wish to use the FY13 baseline because this is actually this is almost a third of your way to your 20% goal. And you say, well, they did both these upgrades. Why does their energy use increase from FY13 to 14? And maybe there's an answer for that, like FY14 was a tough winter. So again, it depends on all the specifics of your community, what they've done, what the years, the weather intensity was for that year, and those sort of things. And to answer this question before it's asked, no, we do not weather normalize the baseline. And we can talk about that more if people have questions. So that's what we have for today. And we're going to take a minute for some questions here. Charlie, no questions yet. All right. Everybody awake out there?
Okay. Well, if anyone is sort of thinking up a question, we'll wait a moment here to see whether any come in. Otherwise, we'll assume that we were extremely clear and that you know exactly how to go about doing your energy baseline, which is great.
So Seth Pickering just reminded me that there's an important piece about Mass Energy Insight, which is rather inconvenient. I will say, which is that when you enter your data, let's say you're entering your oil usage, it takes overnight for your data to show up in the system. So you enter it, but between the time you enter it and it shows up in the report, the system has to save overnight.
Okay, thank you, Amy. In the meantime, we did get a question, which I think Seth is going to read.
Okay, so yep, we have a question that says, how do you enter in vehicle usage? So, you know, what we're looking for there is the fuel usage. So it's not necessarily, you know, how many miles the vehicle drove or things of that nature. It's related to how much fuel the different vehicles may have used and what type of fuel. If when you're formulating your baseline, the only data that you have is the total amount of diesel fuel and the total amount of gasoline that the town or city has consumed over your baseline period, whether it be a fiscal year or a calendar year, that is enough actual data to plug into your baseline. So we're not looking to get so granular that you have to figure out how many miles each separate vehicle that's owned by the town is actually driven. It goes towards how much fuel in total the fleet has consumed.
Right, and if you are asking how that information is entered into Mass Energy Insight, this is one of the quirks of the system where you're going to want to identify a facility, name a facility, vehicles, and under that I would suggest establishing an account for diesel and an account for gasoline, two separate accounts under a, quote, facility that you would categorize as vehicles. That's how most towns enter their data into Mass Energy Insight.
Okay, so this is great. We're getting a couple more questions. I'm going to go to the next one. And this question is that the building, let's see, pays all energy bills. It's a volunteer department. The town doesn't own the building, but it pays the energy bills. So I'm guessing the question would be, would that go towards your baseline?
So the town does not own the facility, but they pay the energy bills. The question, I think, would be, do they have operational control over the facility? Do they have the authority to make upgrades? Usually when someone else owns the building, I would assume not. So I'm doubtful that this would be included in the baseline. But let's talk about the specific circumstances in that case. I would suggest just sending a quick email.
Yes, send us an email. You know, it's my understanding that usually if the town pays for it.
If they can't make them.
We'll have to take a closer look at that one.
Check it out.
So if you took note of your regional coordinator there at the beginning, send that person.
Yeah, reach out. Is there a specific time window when the loaded use data is updated every night?
Yeah.
The best answer to that is overnight. So if you were doing you know, data, if you were working in the system like during the workday one day, when you came in the next morning, it's usually in there.
Right.
I believe that it's, I can't say it's, you know, it's 0000 midnight or whatever when it actually goes in, but it's usually an overnight type of thing. But we just wanted to let you know on that, because if you did, you know, if you manipulated data, you know, say at noontime during the day, and you went back to check and see if it was in there before you left work, say at 5 o'clock, it's not going to show the changes until the next day.
Yep. The other piece to know about that is for the investor-owned electric and gas utilities. They provide energy use information and cost information on a monthly basis. So it is important to get this started as soon as possible, at least with those accounts. Just to give yourself time, if you are served by Eversource in the Wamiko, the former Wamiko territory, what I would say is their data loading is less frequent than the other utilities, so it's even more important to get started early. And I would suggest reaching out to presumably your regional coordinator is Jim Barry. So just letting them know that you've added new accounts, if they're not showing up or not, so we can keep on top of Wamiko for that.
So there's a question here about why Amy's email is set. And that's officially just our subliminal way of trying to get you to contact your regional coordinator.
It's pulled on me today.
I apologize.
It's the
Came up
same.
with the trick question on the MMBTU
it would be amy.puelka@state.
Yeah.
All right, we have another question here about, I added new gas accounts 2 months ago and haven't seen any usage data loaded from utilities. Should I contact Columbia Gas directly? So the answer to that,
Reach out to Peregrine that runs Mass Energy Insight, and see, so you can contact them via support. I would also suggest CCing your regional coordinator.
yes, if you're not on MEI, well, you are on MEI.
They're on MEI.
That. Yep. So, right. Yep. So reach out to both, and we can help try to get that rectified. So sometimes, I believe that they're required to update it at least quarterly. Is that right?
Minimum.
Amy?
Yeah.
Well, at least. And,
Yeah.
and so some of the utilities are quicker to do it than others.
Yeah.
So that looks like the end of our questions for now. We will post them in a Q&A, and the one that we were hedging a bit on about the fire station, we'll answer that as best we can as well.
Yep.
And look for that in a couple of weeks, and we will have these slides and the audio up in a couple of days. And I just want to
Right, and the other place on the file, we'll take a look at that and get you an answer. The other place you can look, though, is right in the guidance, because it does talk about what's allowed and what's not, and you do have the option, as Amy identified in the MEI presentation, that you can actually exclude certain buildings from your baseline if it's appropriate.
and that guidance is posted on our website under how to become a green community and get green communities grants. So.
And then you go to criterion 3.
Right. Okay, so thanks Amy, Seth, and Charlie, and thank all of you for participating today. I hope that many of you will take advantage of this and establish a baseline and apply to be a green community in the fall. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.